Hey everyone, Zach from performance-plus-programming.com, and today we're gonna share my 4 favorite exercises for improving your overhead mobility. So if you're struggling with your overhead lifts, handstand work, or gymnastics-based skills on the rig, then you wanna try these drills out to unlock those shoulders and get you in better position. So our first exercise is gonna be sleeper stretch eccentric. So we've got a band attached low on the ground, and Pamela is gonna have her elbow at the same height as her shoulder. So we've got a 90-degree angle here, and she's got her shoulder blade kind of pulled back underneath her body. And what she's gonna do is use her non-working hand to lift that arm up. Forearm starts flat on the ground, and then she slowly lowers it down. So she's gonna do that for a few reps. What we're doing here with this exercise is so often the backside of the shoulder can be a little bit stiff. And most people don't realize that a little posterior shoulder stiffness will really limit your overhead mobility. So we're starting here. Frequently, the key to unlocking your overhead mobility is getting the backside moving first. So these sleeper eccentrics are my absolute favorite for people with posterior shoulder tightness. Exercise number 2 is going to be the bench or prayer stretch. It goes by both names, but I'm gonna show you 2 different variations depending on where you're more limited in your overhead mobility. So Pamela's gonna start kind of hands together like she's praying on the edge of her bed, and she's just gonna drop down thinking of pulling her chest down towards the ground. And what you're gonna notice as she goes into that position is her shoulders getting open up, but she's also arching her upper back. So we get a little bit of thoracic mobility work as well as shoulders. Now, if you're somebody that's tighter in your lats, and that's what's limiting your shoulder flexibility more, this hack is gonna get you a lot more out of that. So Pamela's gonna hold this PVC pipe, and what she's doing is she's grabbing that with her hands wider than her elbows. So that puts her shoulders in external rotation, and she's also gonna think of rounding her back and kind of keeping her tailbone tucked underneath her, and then she sits back as she goes down. And you'll notice she doesn't go down near as far as she did earlier, because that combination of her tailbone being tucked underneath her and that hand positioning puts a lot more stress on the lat muscle, and it's gonna get more of a stretch in that area compared to earlier when her hands were together. Exercise number 3 is gonna be lat eccentric. So Pamela's laying on a bench or a box. She's got her hips flexed and her hands are grabbing the PVC pipe with a light weight on it, palms up. That combination of palms up, hips flexed, that biases the lat muscle a little bit more. She's gonna lower that down overhead and then bring it back up. But that's a slow lower down, a little pause in the bottom, and then back up. The back up doesn't have to be slow if you wanna speed it up. The reason why I like this is not only does it stretch the lats and shoulders, but for so many people with stiff shoulders, as they overhead press or do any overhead movements, they'll tend to arch their back quite a bit. And that kind of becomes their like ingrained pattern when they're going overhead, is that to make up for those stiff shoulders, they use their low back a little bit. Well, as we mobilize those shoulders, we don't want that to still be the position that you go to when you overhead press or do overhead drills. So by doing this setup, we can really cue that athlete to keep their abdominals on, lock in their back positioning as we open the shoulders up. Okay, my last favorite exercise for improving overhead mobility is down dog. But I'm gonna do this with a couple different technique twists to it. Number 1, we start by pulling the shoulder blades together, kind of letting the body sink down, and then we push our shoulder blades apart. So we're gonna activate all the muscles around the shoulder girdle. Then after Pamela's in this high plank position with her shoulder blades pushed forward, she's gonna continue to think of pressing her hands into the ground as her hips open up. This is gonna stretch our thoracic spine. This is gonna stretch our shoulders while we work on all these little small muscles being engaged around the shoulder girdle. For a lot of athletes, that in-range strength they lack a little bit of, especially if they've had stiff shoulders for a long time. So this is a great combination drill to open up a little bit of mobility, as well as putting a little bit of that in-range strength on the shoulder, so that we're not just opening up mobility you can't control or aren't strong in. You get the best of both worlds by doing a little bit of downward dog. All right, so there you have my 4 favorite exercises for improving your overhead mobility. Some of those you've seen before, some of those you probably haven't. The key to the shoulder is unlocking those areas, and you will be in such better positioning for all of your overhead lifts. If you want a proven plan to help you do that, check out our overhead mobility overhaul at performance-plus-programming.com, which has helped thousands of athletes get their shoulders in a healthier, more mobile state.